Good afternoon and welcome. You're tuned in and listening to Back Talk with Sharona. I'm your host. My name is Sharona. Hey, thanks for tuning in. Riding solo dolo today. Quick show post Super Bowl. Shout out to everyone out there on their grind, like your girl Sharona, still doing their thing. Only an hour today, with some very, very brief thoughts on some things I've been wanting to talk about. We'll wrap up Super Bowl 50 in the NFL season in our final 30 minutes. But first, we're going to talk about gaming. We'll start out this show with some gaming talk, and then I want to talk about Chris Rock. I've been meaning to talk about Chris Rock, his comments on diversity in Hollywood, the pay disparity that women experience in Hollywood. If we have time, I'll weigh in with some more of my thoughts on the Katie Nolan thing that I talked about over the weekend. So very excited to lead off the off season, the NFL and football off season, with some topics that are near and dear to my heart. Probably won't get around to talking about Bernie Sanders, Hillary Clinton, or the presidential elections. Maybe another podcast later on in the week talking about that. But your girl Sharona is going to slide into off-season mode and maybe only do one podcast per week. We'll see about that. Again, it's Monday following the Super Bowl. I'm tired. You're tired. A lot of fatigue regarding this 2015 season, and we'll talk about the Cam Newton narratives. I didn't get a chance to really talk about all the pearl clutching going on over Peyton Manning and his beer drinking comment. We'll probably talk about that on another day. But first up, we're going to talk some gaming. So we'll take a very, very, very quick break. When we come back, you'll be listening to Back Talk with Sharona. Welcome back. You're listening to Back Talk with Sharona. Time to talk some gaming. You guys know that's a subject that's near and dear to my heart. So, Saturday, with the upcoming final game of the NFL season approaching, and a little bit of some downtime for your girl Sharona, I decided to devote some of my spare time to one of my favorite fixes, and that is gaming. So I was looking for a new gaming series to play that would allow me to play as a female character, as a woman. And there are just so few options out there. It really is. And I know this because I've been gaming forever. And I've been looking for new gaming series forever. But there aren't really all that many options. Probably of course you guys know I play a lot of Dragon Age. And I've been playing a lot of Inquisition. We've talked a little bit about that on this show. We'll talk about that some more. I need to get back on Twitch and finish up my Nightmare run on Inquisition. But more on that later. I digress. So I was looking for a new gaming series. I guess I'm going to go back to the Lara Croft series and try to play some of it. I've got Destiny. I need to play it. By the way, shout out to Microsoft and the Xbox people for the backward compatibility on the Xbox One. I've downloaded and played some of my favorite games, Fable 1, Mass Effect, among others, and it's a great experience. You've done an excellent job, and I look forward to seeing more of my favorite titles. Skyrim's coming, Mass Effect 3 allegedly coming. How about Mass Effect 2, wink wink, and some others. But I wish gaming companies would do a better job of giving options for women to play as a female character. It's something that I enjoy, that I like a lot, and far too long we've been ignored in that genre and in that capacity. So I was playing some Mass Effect 3 during some of the brief moments of downtime that I've had over the past week or so. And I finally I've talked to some on this show about the fact that I don't like, Mass Effect 3 is a great game, don't get me wrong. I don't like the ending. I'm not all that happy about Mass Effect Andromeda in that, it takes place way after the events of the Mass Effect original trilogy. And so, Commander Shepard's gone and all of that. And I understand, you got to create a new storyline. Wah, wah, wah. But I think here's the thing that I was thinking about as I was playing it a little bit Saturday afternoon. And here it is. In Mass Effect 3, of course, if you're familiar with Fem Shep, or if you play as John Shepard, whatever, if you're familiar with the Shepard storyline in Mass Effect 3, Shepard gets the opportunity to save the world, and there are a couple of different ways the ending can go down. But there's some downloadable content that allows you to sort of supercharge the story in a way. And one of my favorites is the Shore Leave, the Citadel Shore Leave DLC. And it gives you this great apartment, and there's a casino and a club, and you can go dancing and all of that stuff. And but to really enjoy the cutscenes and everything that takes place in that DLC, you have to play it toward the end of the game. And the best time to play it is after you recruit Tally and you're going toward the final conclusion. I typically play it before Priority Thessia, right after I recruit Tally and complete Priority Rannoch. So, and I think a lot of gamers do. But so here you are. You've got this great a great apartment with a lot of cool things to do, and you have the ability to reconnect with a love interest, or start a new love interest if you want to, if you like, the romance options in the Mass Effect gaming series, and I think they're cool. Mass Effect was really revolutionary, and Dragon Age did this too, in the sense that they allowed for you to romance characters of your own genre. And of course, the option to romance characters of a different race or whatever. You can romance aliens, but it was revolutionary in that sense. It was far more inclusive to gamers who don't meet that traditional, stereotypical, brotastic, white male. And, in Mass Effect 2, you get the option to, as a female Shepard, to romance Jacob, who is, he's a human member of Cerberus, but he exemplifies I suppose, the black male. And so, you can be, a white female character in romance. And at the time, I mean, that was, well, I remember people being all up in their emotions about that. So, I mean, it does have all of those things. But here's the thing, you don't get a chance to really enjoy it. You get all of these cool things and all of these cool perks. Shepard saves the galaxy, and then that's it. You don't get a follow-up. You don't get to see how any of that goes. I think that's one of the things about, and I've only played the Trespasser DLC for Inquisition once so far. I'm going to play it a lot more times, but closure and wrapping up and all of that is, to me, one of the best things that you can do to any series, whether it's a movie, whether it's a gaming series, whatever it is, a book, whatever it is that you're that you're consuming in terms of entertainment value, having that closure and being it to enjoy and have the satisfaction of of enjoying those the end of storylines is one of the great things about it. And I think that Mass Effect really does its fans a disservice in the way Mass Effect 3 was handled in the final encounter, and how it just abruptly ends. And I know that it's not going to change things for that gaming series, but maybe think about that in the future. I don't know how other gamers feel. Hey, if you're a gamer out there and you want to weigh in on that, you can hit me up on Twitter at Sports by Sharona, or send me an email, sportsbysharona@gmail.com. I'd love to hear from you about how you feel about that, because it's definitely something that is important to me, that I would like to see gaming developers do a lot better, and not just in the diversity and having games that allow you to play as more like someone of your own genre, your own persuasion, and what have you, but enabling them to enjoy the experience more fully. So, just some brief thoughts on that. We're going to talk about gaming a lot more in the months to come. So we'll take a really quick break. When we come back, I definitely want to weigh in on the Beyonce's new video, Formation, Chris Rock, his comments about Hollywood, women and diversity, the pay, the wage disparity, and a lot more things. So stay tuned in. You are listening to Back Talk with Sharona, and I'm your host. My name is Sharona. Alright, welcome back. You're tuned in and listening to Bat Talk with Sharona. So Beyonce won the weekend great Super Bowl halftime performance by Bey, and with the release of her new music video, Formation. Great song, great video. After I had a chance to watch it, I believe that was Sunday morning, I said that I was going to talk about it on the show today, and I'm going to, but only briefly, because I'm still thinking about it. I'm still, trying to formulate. Speaking of formation, formulate my thoughts on how I feel about certain aspects of it. Overall, I love it. I think it's fantastic. She's fantastic. Obviously, it is a video where she indicates how proud she is of her heritage, talking about where her mother and her father both hail from, and the visual presentation is fantastic because it is a shout out to the Black Panthers, to Black Pride, and to Black Girl Magic, and all of those things are wonderful and awesome, and I don't really have anything negative at all to say about it. I've been critical of Beyonce in the past because, not terribly so. I suppose I've been more questioning of her because for a few years I was concerned because I felt like she was bleaching her skin and straightening her hair and doing things to make her seem more, I hate to say this, but more white. And I don't know, it just, I don't want to say that it bothered me. I just felt like it was heartbreaking to me. And so I had made some comments about that. But her video, makes it very clear that those are things that, the hair and skin color and all of that are things that she's proud of, and, shout out to her for that. The thing that kind of raised the hair on the back of my neck at first is because of the very liberal use of the word bitch. And you guys know I'm not terribly fond of the word. We've talked about my love-hate relationship with the word, and I understand that there are women who want to reclaim the word, who want to take away the negative context. But as I was thinking about it over, over the past, I don't know, 24, 36 hours, whatever, here's where I come down. For a lot of women, the word symbolizes abuse and violence because it is a word that often gets used when women are disparaged, when women are criticized, when women are abused, when women are threatened, and when women are assaulted. And for a lot of women, it brings up those images, those feelings, those emotions. It's a trigger word in that way. And so while I salute women empowering themselves and in trying to negate negative words, with slut walk and all of that, let's try to remember that words have power. And for a lot of women, it's not quite that easy to forget where the word came from and how the word has been used. So, all right, so on to Chris Rock. I've been wanting to talk about this for a long time, and I'm just now getting around to it. So Chris Rock, who I think is a fantastic comedian, speaking of love-hate relationships, I definitely have a love-hate relationship with Chris Rock. Chris Rock is a dude that, while I admire and respect a lot of things that he says and does, some other things not so much. Most notably his defense of and comments about Bill Cosby, the negative way he's talked about the women, the vast amount of women who have come forward to relate their tales of abuse and assault by Bill Cosby. Well, Chris Rock had to insert himself into a conversation that women are having regarding diversity in Hollywood, the wage disparity, and other topics. It was most recently regurgitated in The Root, and so I'm going to read to you guys just some of the things that he had to say about that. So Chris Rock said, and the Root does a good job trying to spin it in a very positive fashion. First he comes out and says, I've never done any movie, the silliest movie, where some studio person hasn't gone, does the girl have to be black? It happens every time. He said that in the original interview that led me to want to have this conversation in Essence magazine. Well, not to distract from that, and I would like for Chris Rock to name names here and talk about what movies in particular he is discussing, because it was very much a topic of conversation when Will Smith did the movie Hitch, that it couldn't be a white woman. We couldn't have a black male with a white woman. That was anathema. Unheard of. Don't do that. And they settled for a Latina who played the love interest, the romantic interest of Will Smith. Rock makes a very valid point in that black actresses in Hollywood are definitely at the bottom of the totem pole and have experienced far too much in the way of discrimination and other matters, and no question but that the wage disparity hits them the hardest. As is always, Hollywood is just a microcosm of society in a larger sense, because that's definitely been an issue and been a problem. But here's the thing. He also came out and said, don't talk to Jennifer Lawrence. Everybody's talking about Jennifer Lawrence. So no, forget Jennifer Lawrence. Talk to Gabrielle Union. Talk to Kerry Washington. They would love to get Jennifer Lawrence's plays. Yada, yada, yada. Blah, blah, blah. You can make your point without denigrating another woman, Chris. Women are quite capable of having this conversation. And I understand it's being portrayed in the sense that you're going to bat for your for fellow black actresses. I understand that. I get that. But you know what? They're quite capable of talking on their own, of having this conversation on their own. And I would hope, and I've never seen either one of the actresses that you're talking about denigrate another peer in the business in the way that you did. There is a tactic that is quite common when people want to cause dissension, when they want to cause a divide in a group that should be unified in matters that pertain to them. And it's called divide and conquer. And I see this a lot when women try to band together and assert their power as a group, as a genre, as a whole, in combating things that affect them as a group. And to me, the way Chris Rock presents this conversation is divisive. It's counterproductive. I don't like the way he tries to divide and conquer us. I understand that I have white privilege that I can't ever do anything about, and that I can't hope to, to really and fully understand what my black sisters or my other sisters of color might experience. But you know what? I'm not going to denigrate someone else in order to help try to alleviate the situation. I'm going to try to build bridges. I'm going to try to band together, because together we're a much greater force than we are apart. And this is a conversation, this is a topic, this is a subject that women have been fighting for years. And I've always felt like our differences, while they are important, are not nearly as important as the things that bind us. The things that should bind us, the commonality between us. And there's a painful past between women in terms of color and ethnicity. And if I can do anything, if I have any lasting legacy on the face of this earth, it's that I hope to try to heal some of those wounds, and to try to build bridges that get past some of that. And I think that you're very counterproductive to that process. So hey, that felt good. I've been wanting to get that off my chest. And Chris Rock is going to be on the Oscars. He is hosting the Oscars that we've been talking about so much. I might actually watch it this year, see what kind of job he does, because honestly, quite frankly, I'm just about almost done with Dude. I'm pretty much almost done with Dude. Alright, so that's it. We'll take another quick break. You've been listening to Back Talk with Sharona. Alright, that's it for the first half hour of Back Talk with Sharona. In the second part of this hour, we're going to be talking about the National Football League, Marshawn Lynch, Shady McCoy, and of course Super Bowl 50. You'll get my thoughts on Cam Newton, Peyton Manning, and more. It was great to get to talk about gaming, and I've definitely been wanting to get some thoughts out there about Chris Rock and some of his comments here lately. I had intended to weigh in a little bit more on my thoughts over the weekend about Katie Nolan. So here it is. Listen, pay attention to what people do, not what they say. There's very much a wave in media. Sports media is not isolated to this, but you definitely see it there where people want, hot topics and taking advantage of certain issues, certain things in order to get clicks and ratings and things of that nature. If you care about something, you should talk about it. I definitely believe that. But if you're a hypocrite, maybe, just maybe, have a seat and don't use, the things that are real life things to people as clickbait or as ratings bait, because it matters, for victims of domestic violence, for rape victims, seeing their life and things that have happened to them utilized in that way can be hurtful, can be harmful. So, just a thought there. We'll take another very, very, very quick break. When we come back, our NFL segment. So stay tuned in. You are listening to Back Talk with Sharona. All right, welcome back. You're tuned in and listening to Bat Talk with Sharona. I am your host. My name is Sharona. This is our NFL segment. We'll get to Super Bowl 50 in a minute. We'll start with some big news this morning. Big news in the sense that it involves non-Super Bowl news. More on Marshawn Lynch later, by the way. The news that former Philadelphia Eagles running back and current Buffalo Bills running back LaShawn McCoy had been involved with an altercation with 2, maybe 3 off-duty police officers last night in the Philadelphia area, allegedly over champagne. At your popping bottles, we see shady, shady, shady. We've talked about shady on this show before. I can't say that I'm all that surprised by this news, but big news, the off-season officially started somewhere around 11-ish last night with the conclusion of Super Bowl 50. And as it usually turns out, during the off-season, player arrests tend to spike with the off time and the the lack of structure and what have you. So, congratulations to Shady McCoy on the distinction of being the leadoff batter for off-season arrest. We'll see how that situation plays out, what other information comes out about that. If you were sleeping under a rock, hiding somewhere, or what have you, and you missed the big game last night, or if as is perfectly understandable and reasonable, you chose not to watch the game live and as well as via social media, Facebook, Twitter, what have you, you might have missed this news. There had been rumors, some discussion that Beast Mode, Marshawn Lynch, might retire. He's been talking about that for a couple of years, and as most attention whores try to do, he tried to steal the limelight last night from the Carolina Panthers and the Denver Broncos, the Seattle Seahawks not being in the Super Bowl this year. I'm sure that was hard for them. They've been in it so much here lately. But somewhere toward the end of the third quarter, maybe in the fourth quarter, he tweeted out a photograph of some shoes tied up with the laces tied up in a knot, dangling from some mechanism. It does look like that was his way of announcing that he's decided to hang them up metaphorically, so to speak. And if that is true, certainly will miss Marshawn Lynch and his accomplishments on the football field. I find it extremely ironic that a guy who couldn't be bothered to answer questions from the media when he played in the big game in the Super Bowl, wanted to steal attention away from those who were actually playing in the game by making his announcement then and in that way. But beast mode gonna beast mode, I suppose, eh? But let's go ahead and talk about the game itself. It was everything I imagined and then some. I love me some defense. You guys know I'm a defensive girl, and we've talked on this show a lot about how great the Denver defense has been this year. And boy, did they live up to the hype. We have been talking about this game over the course of the past couple of weeks as, the playoffs ended and the big game approached. And we did a big preview show on Friday. If you will recall, I had predicted Carolina would win this football game. I still think that, overall, they had a more balanced football team. I'm not so sure that they utilized their talent in the best way that they possibly could have. But, in all fairness, when it comes down to it, you never really know how good two football teams are until they match up against the best. And Denver statistically had the best defense in the National Football League in 2015. Carolina had one of the best, if not the best, offenses in the National Football League in 2015. Cam Newton had a fantastic 2015 season. Nothing can take that away from him. If you're trying to take that away from him, please have yourself all the seats in the stadium. But I digress. We'll talk a little bit more about Cam Newton, all the pearl clutching over Cam Newton's press conference, as well as Peyton Manning's and those narratives later. By the way, great discussion with Vashti Hurt and Jennifer Eakins on Friday's show about the Cam versus Peyton narrative and about perception and how Cam Newton is perceived. It wasn't a great moment for him after the game was over, but there were definitely extenuating circumstances. We'll talk about that later. By the way, this game was hosted by Levi's Stadium, the home of the San Francisco 49ers in Santa Clara, not San Francisco, Santa Clara, California. Cali. They definitely could have done some things strategically and in other ways. The field, the poor turf at Levi's Stadium has been a conversation for a while. And you could definitely see that it affected the Carolina Panthers far more than it did the Denver Broncos. The Carolina Panthers were going to have their hands full, not just metaphorically, but practically and physically with Denver's defense. And that proved to be accurate. It proved to be the case. I said that I felt like Carolina would win this football game unless Denver was able to get a score defensively, which I said was entirely possible, and in fact it did happen. Former Tennessee volunteer Malik Jackson getting that possibly once in a lifetime moment. It's very difficult to make this big game. Peyton Manning, another former Tennessee volunteer, going out on top. It was such a great moment. For me, this was going to be a difficult game because I like both of these football teams. We've talked about both of these football teams a lot on this show. Jennifer Eakins, our Denver Broncos correspondent, being so kind to devote so much of her time and attention to come on and talk about the team. Of course, Peyton Manning, former volunteer, we talk about him a lot on this show. Not just because, I'm a Tennessee alum, but, because I do live in the great state of Tennessee, and he's very popular here, so there is that interest. It was going to be difficult because I do like the Carolina Panthers. I have followed them closely for a long, long, long time. Almost since they came into the league, the first couple of seasons, not so much. I wasn't really following football all that much back then anyway. Although I did grow up a big football fan. Jerry Jones had run me off from the Dallas Cowboys, and I took a little bit of a hiatus. I just wasn't following any NFL team from around 92 to 97 when the Tennessee Titans, who were then the Houston Oilers, came to Tennessee, became the Tennessee Oilers, and then the Tennessee Titans. But we talk a lot about both of these teams on this show, or we did, over the course of this past season. And so I felt like I had allegiance to both of them. So I was like, okay, I'm just going to root for a good game and hope for no injuries, and I'll be happy with whatever outcome. I had my Carolina Panthers t-shirt on. I had my Tennessee Volunteers, a pair of my Tennessee Volunteers shorts on. But there was a defining moment in the pregame when I was like, yeah, I just got to pull for Peyton to get that last one, to go out on top. And I do think that Peyton Manning is going to retire. I think that this is it. His body is betraying him. He did not have a great football game last night. Cam Newton didn't have his best game either. We'll talk about both of those quarterback performances here in a minute. But there was a moment in the pregame, and I tweeted out a photo of this, and they were showing Peyton, and I got all emotional, just got all up in my emotions, and I was like, you know what? Part of me just really, really, really has to pull for that. And so while it was very sad, and gosh, I just broke down in tears when I saw Josh Norman crying after the game, but I thought that Peyton winning it was going to be worth it, and in fact it was, and I'm so happy for him. I'm happy for the Denver Broncos. As narratives go, everybody talking about Cam, and Cam he's not acting like a leader and a winner by walking out on his press conference. Well, you know what? The Denver Broncos didn't handle the post-game press conferences very classily either. We'll talk about T.J. Ward and some of the other comments. Chris Harris, I don't really have what Chris Harris said and the manner in which it was being said when Cam Newton was trying to do his press conference. That was not Chris Harris's fault. He was simply answering, the questions. It was definitely a bad look by Levi Stadium and the San Francisco 49ers to put all of the players in that situation. Just poor planning, poor execution overall. I think if anyone bears the brunt of the criticism, it should be them. But let's talk a little bit about the game and about the matchups. We had been saying all year long that Denver's front seven was absolutely fantastic. And I told someone last night, a friend of mine last night, that this was roughly in the third quarter, maybe the beginning of the fourth quarter, that Denver's defense was the best that I had seen in my life. I've been watching football for a long, long, long time, and it was the best that I'd ever seen. It was one of the best defensive performances that I can ever recall seeing. Are they the best defense ever? I certainly think that they need to be in that conversation. It was an absolutely dominant performance by Von Miller, DeMarcus Ware, Derek Wolfe, Malik Jackson, who we talked about with his defensive score. By the way, I believe it was Von Miller that caused that that fumble, that sack, and that led to that score. Von Miller, rightfully so, being named the defensive MVP. We said on Friday's show, and I'd said a couple of times, I just felt like this was the year. It was a perfect storm for, two great defenses. Coney Ealy for the Carolina Panthers also having a fantastic football game. If they had won, possibly could have been him. But I just felt like it was the kind of game, it was shaping up to be the kind of game where a defensive player was going to win the most valuable player. And boy, Von Miller, his performance was so dominant. He was an absolute wrecking machine. He was absolutely deserving of it. DeMarcus Ware, not to take anything. Chris Harris. There's so many great football players on Denver's defense, and that is, I think, the key to why Denver won. Not just because of the defensive effort, but because the the talent there was simply too much for the Panthers to handle. You can only put so many players on a football field, and when you're putting three guys on Von Miller, to try to handle him, you're leaving DeMarcus Ware one on one. You're leaving Wolf and Malik Jackson, and then T.J. Ward can come in on a safety blitz, and you've got man coverage. You know, it is a recipe for success for a defensive-minded football team, and that's what the Broncos have been in 2015. Peyton Manning, one of the greatest to ever do it, was not a great year for him. He basically lost his starting job. Now he was able to reclaim it, and I think that's a great story. You could spend an entire show talking about that alone, and we've talked about that. But Von Miller ended the game with six tackles, five of them solo. He had 2.5 sacks. He had one of the best defensive plays that Von Miller had in this game was a play where he was actually in coverage one-on-one with a Carolina Panthers wide receiver. It was either Ted Ginn or Philly Brown. I can't remember which one it was. He ended the game with one pass defense, and it was this play, and it was fantastic. I mean, how do you account for a player like that who is so versatile, who is so difficult to contain, and that is why he so rightfully was the most valuable player, because he was the most valuable player on the football field. The left side of Denver's front seven was credited with 3 sacks and 7 hurries. Von Miller accounting for most of that. He finished the game with 2.5 sacks. He had 2 quarterback hits. But his impact can't be understated. He had an absolutely fantastic football game. By the way, DeMarcus Ware, he had 2 sacks. He had 2 tackles for a loss. He had 4 quarterback hits. It was neck and neck there for a long time in my mind, over who, statistically and impact-wise was going to be the MVP of this football game, and it ended up being Von Miller. He was able to make just a few more plays, and I think what pushed it over the edge for the voters, it had to be that play in coverage. I mean, that was just such a fantastic play. But shout out to DeMarcus Ware for the season that he had, for the impact that he had, not just in the 2015 season, but in the Super Bowl. A great example of one of the guys who gets it, who does everything the right way, and I bet Jerry Jones and the Dallas Cowboys are crying in the car right now over their really head-scratching decision to let him walk away. It was awesome to watch him have such a great year, and another guy that's been doing this for a long time, and he's by no means going to hang up his cleats, but I loved seeing him get that championship too. All right, let's talk a little bit about the quarterback performances. And we mentioned this before. Peyton Manning, his body is, I don't want to say betraying him, but it's breaking down. He was lucky. He threw several passes that should have been intercepted and weren't. He got very, very, very lucky that way. He did throw for 141 yards. A lot of people making a lot of that. I mean, when your defense is playing so well and scoring points, you don't necessarily have to. Denver only 90 yards rushing as a team. Ronnie Hillman, by the way, woof. C.J. Anderson, 23 carries with the 90 yards and the touchdown to seal the victory. Cam Newton, on the other hand, 18 of 41, 265 yards. No touchdowns, 1 interception. He was sacked 6 times for a loss of 64 yards. Huge stat there. He was under pressure the entire game. He was able to make some plays. It wasn't the best performance by Cam Newton, but by far it was not a terrible performance. He did the best that he could, running for his life and trying to make plays, trying to basically carry the team, because his wide receivers were letting him down. There were several tip passes one leading to that interception. By the way, I agree completely. Lord, I can't talk today. I agree completely with what Carolina Panthers head coach Ron Rivera had to say after the game. And that's that it wasn't a great performance. It wasn't all on Cam. He said we fumbled the ball when we really haven't fumbled the ball this year. And he's right. Carolina had not turned the ball over very much at all, and that's a credit to Denver's defense. He said there were a couple of tip passes. He gave the Denver Broncos credit and said that they stayed on their game plan, they played their game, and it kind of took Carolina off. Now here for the fumble, that last fumble that Cam Newton didn't immediately pounce on and try to recover and whatever. He's taking a lot of flack for that, and this is a great way to segue into our Cam Newton discussion and then talk about the post-game press conferences and whatnot. Listen, I've watched that play over and over and over again, and I agree completely with Coach Rivera when he said, and Cam did make a business decision. He made a football decision, but it's not the one that everybody... Listen, Cam Newton is not afraid to put his body on the line. You're an idiot if you're out there saying, oh, Cam didn't want to put his body on the line. No, you're an idiot. Cam Newton's not afraid to put his body on the line. He thought the ball was going to bounce. And it did bounce, but it bounced away from him. And at that point, there was really no... sometimes the ball bounces against you. The ball bounces in a way that takes the play completely out of your control. And, in that split second, he thought the ball was going to bounce back, and it didn't. So, I don't know. It's just emblematic of the kind of hate that Cam Newton gets, and the complete inability of people to get past his smile and his celebrations. And by the way, the Denver Broncos, rightfully so, celebrating and with all of their comments post game. We're going to talk about that here in a minute. Great way to segue to that. We'll take a quick break. When we come back, all the narratives. So stay tuned in. You're listening to Bat Talk with Sharona. Welcome back. You're tuned in and listening to Bat Talk with Sharona. Time to talk some Cam Newton post Super Bowl press conference, Peyton Manning press conference, all the pearl clutching going on there, as well as some other post Super Bowl 50 press conferences, and then we'll wrap things up. Cam Newton is a guy, and we talked about this on the show Friday, and we've talked about it over the past several months. He's a guy that people seem to either love or they hate. The smile, the celebrations, the great things, the giving the footballs to the kids and visiting the hospitals and stuff often seems to get lost in the narrative. The Panthers lost, heartbreaker of the game. The final score, by the way, in that game, 24-10, Denver Broncos over the Carolina Panthers. Panthers not able to get much going offensively. It wasn't a great football game for Cam Newton. We talked about the stats. He did have 6 carries for 45 yards. He was, in terms of the offense, still the best player on the football field. His teammates, the tackles we talked about, a lot of difficulty containing Denver's defense. But after the game, he did congratulate Peyton Manning. A great photo, a lot of great photos of him in that moment, smiling, congratulating Peyton Manning. He clearly looks happy for the dude, for Peyton winning that game, and I'm sure that as a quarterback, he can appreciate that moment for Peyton Manning, and that gets lost in the narrative as the good things often tend to do. And we're going to play the audio from the video that was taken of that moment so that you, our dear listeners, can hear exactly what Cam Newton was experiencing in that very tough moment following the loss in Super Bowl 50, where he's trying to answer questions. You can hear Chris Harris very loudly in the background. No fault to Chris Harris, by the way. This is completely and totally on the National Football League and the San Francisco 49ers and the setup that they used. So here we go.
We'll be back.
Ron said Denver 2 years ago had a tough time. They bounced back. You take that to heart when he told you after the game?
No.
Can you put a finger on why Carolina did not play the way it normally plays?
Got outplayed.
Is there a reason why?
Got outplayed, bro.
Was there anything Denver did defensively that, I know you'd seen them, studied them. Was it pretty much what you had seen on film? Was there anything different you think they put in for this game?
Nothing different.
Cam, do we sometimes, I know football players don't forget, but do we sometimes forget that defenses can still take apart any offense in this game?
Evan Mathis at podium 14.
No. He told us a lot of things.
Anything in particular that's memorable?
Nope.
Obviously, you're disappointed. You've won tremendous games before, and I know you've had some tough losses too. Since it's on the biggest stage, it's difficult. I know.
Can you put into words the disappointment that you feel?
Did you see anything that you didn't expect today?
They just played better than us. I don't know what you want me to say. It's like they made more plays than us, and that's what it come down to. We had our opportunities. It wasn't nothing special that they did. We dropped balls. We turned the ball over. Gave up sacks. Threw errant passes. That's it. They scored more points than us.
Can you put into words the disappointment that you feel right now?
We lost.
Yeah, on that fumble, looking at the ball, you thought that you were trying to pick it up and extend the play, or is that why you didn't hit the dead guard?
No.
Did they ever change anything defensively to take away your running lanes?
No.
I know you're disappointed, not just for yourself and your teammates, because you guys talked about how you are a band of brothers coming in. And it's got to be real tough for everybody in that locker room.
Now listen, I'm not here to justify Cam's demeanor or his surliness, his pettiness in how he handled that press conference. It was not a great moment for him. There's really no other way to spin that. He's got to do better. He has to understand that he can't just take the good stuff. He's got to take the bad with the good. And when you lose a football game, you have to come out and handle business and answer the questions, as ridiculous as they are or as you think they might be. That is the true mark of a professional and of a champion, and he simply didn't do that. There were definitely some extenuating circumstances. The proximity between the Carolina Panthers, the way that Cam had to sit and listen to what Chris Harris was saying. And listen, Chris Harris didn't say anything wrong. He wasn't being arrogant. He was simply describing what their game plan was, and he was right, and it worked, and they won. And it was just a regrettable moment in what I think will be a long and very successful career for Cam Newton in the National Football League. And I think that he will learn from this the Denver Broncos had some very classless remarks to say about the Carolina Panthers. I believe it was T.J. Ward who said that they wanted to be they wanted to be champions, but that Cam Newton and the Carolina Panthers wanted to be rappers and backup dancers. Well, okay, thanks. Whatever. You can have a seat too, TJ. Listen, the Carolina Panthers worked hard, and they played hard, and they had a fantastic year, and you can't take that away from them, and you shouldn't take that away from them. I very much dislike that, and one of the reasons why I don't follow Wade Phillips on Twitter, I don't like his personality whatsoever, and he had a very classless tweet of his own to say as well. I think that he's a great defensive coach. His defense played very well, but he can miss me with that. With that too, and then Aqib Talib, what can you say about him? Have all the seats, Aqib, please. Thank you. You almost did, by the way. You busted your ass in your post Super Bowl press conference moment. So congratulations. And by the way, the Denver Broncos won in spite of you. So have a seat as well. All right, so we'll take another very quick break. When we come back, we'll wrap it up. So stay tuned in. You're listening to Bat Talk with Sharona. All right, so that's it for today. Before we get out of here, I definitely wanted to weigh in on all the pearl clutching going in over Peyton Manning's comments about drinking beer. So many people up in their emotions uh, with their underoos wadded up. Well, no one think of the children, Peyton out here telling everybody to drink and drive and become an alcoholic. And can't you just let these two guys live? My goodness. Peyton, when asked about his retirement, said he had some other priorities first. He wanted to go hug and kiss his wife and kids, hug his family, and then he was going to take some time off and drink some beer. I mean, if anything, it was weird in the sense that he is a spokesperson. That's kind of a no-no. He's done it before. Will the NFL say or do anything? I don't know. I don't really care. Let these two guys live. Let them enjoy the moment. Shout out to the Carolina Panthers and to the Denver Broncos for making the big game. The Panthers will be back. They'll be better than ever. Will Peyton or won't he? I suspect he will retire. Thanks for listening. You've been listening to Bat Talk with Sharona. I'm your host. My name is Sharona. You can find information about another show this week. We'll definitely do one more, when and where and how and all that good stuff on my Twitter feed, Sports by Sharona. Have a great week, and we'll be back.